Good day everyone. In today's video we'll be watching my Ayaka's first runs and 9-star clears for both sides of the Abyss, with some discussion as to some of her mechanics, how I feel about her, party members, and so on. Now I hadn't intended to make this a video, as the Abyss is just about to reset. I just wanted to get a bit of a gauge on how much damage she could do with the characters, weapons, and artifacts I currently have. However, after doing so, I decided it would be a good video to talk about what I think about her. Before getting into the Abyss runs though, I'd like to quickly look at her gear so that we know, going into the showcase, how she is built. Now for the weapons, the best weapon I think hands down is going to be the Blackcliff Longsword, with the black sword coming in right behind it. The new crafted sword is alright, but there are two major reasons I don't think it is all that good on Ayaka, but we will get into that later. Now here you can see the fruit of exclusively farming the Blizzard domain for a month and a half, pain. I still have yet to receive a crit damage circlet, and so have to use this pretty terrible cryo goblet instead of this rather nice cryo goblet, and so as soon as I can get my hands on a crit damage circlet, we'll gain an instant 21% additional crit damage. My feather is alright. Flat defense growing twice is a bit sad, but I've seen far worse, so I'm perfectly fine with this piece. However, my flower grew crit damage once, and does nothing else, and my timepiece is the same story, just slightly worse. If I can get a crit damage circlet, and say a flower and a timepiece, with 2 growths into crit damage, my Ayaka should have over 230% crit damage, which would be pretty nice. Talents are a bit lopsided at 9, 6, and 9, and that's simply because I still need much better artifacts. I just don't feel like her elemental skill is worth going over 6, because as you can see, even if it were to get another 3 levels, it probably wouldn't do much more damage than a single charge stack combo, despite only being able to be used once every 10 seconds. So now that we've seen my Ayaka's current state, let's get into those Abyss runs. As for our team, we're using Mona, Bennett, and Sucrose to act as damage amps, and to gather enemies should that be needed. But before I get into that, I want to first mention how Ayaka felt in here to me. The builds I have ran in here so far are Physical Freeze Kaching, Electro Overload Kaching, and Vaporize Hu Tao. And while I'll definitely mess up a bunch through these runs due to just not really paying enough attention, I've never cleared floor 12 with such a feeling of ease. The group rotation really does not work well, and I shall have to try and tweak it. But for the first time, at least for me, the Abyss didn't feel like banging my head against a wall, but a rather strange sense of calm as Ayaka's burst simply tears through the enemies, while she throws in some charge attacks to clean them up, dashing to and fro. I really did not expect her burst to be able to deal this much damage. It really is worth the 80 energy cost. And while her charge stacks aren't nearly as good as Kaching's, she can still do a decent amount of damage with them if you dash cancel them, which you can do thanks to her second passive. Getting into her dash and second passive is the first mechanic to mention. The text on her passive is rather misleading. As her dash has the normal internal cooldown, I had thought that it wouldn't be that useful, as it would only be able to give you back stamina once every so often. However, it actually activates even if cryo application is on cooldown, so as long as you dash into enemies, you can say dash cancel or charge stack with no cost for the dash. As for the charge stack, you may have noticed it did not hit both Geovashaps, even though both were very close to me, and I believe, thanks to the endless handguard farming, I now understand why. The charge stack doesn't hit all the enemies close to you in a cone or anything like that, but rather seems to choose a single enemy and hit any available targets around them. I noticed this when I was fighting 2 samurai. One was standing outside of my charge stack range, and one I was spamming charge stack on, when the one close to me suddenly jumped back towards the further enemy while I was in the middle of my charge stack, and the charge stack damaged both, even though the further wasn't getting hit before. That would explain why the Geovashaps aren't both getting hit, because while they're both close to me, partially due to their size, they are not close enough to each other. One other thing I'd like to mention is rotation. A lot of other characters in this game prefer to use their elemental skill followed by their burst, so that may come as second nature at this point, but unless you are only using Ayaka for her burst and then immediately swapping off of her, you want to do the opposite, because casting her skill grants her a 6-second buff to her normal charge stacks, and so if you cast her skill before the burst, you will lose a third to half of the uptime on the buff, as her burst takes pretty long to go off. So to make the most use of her, you probably want to use her burst and then her skill to get the full damage of her first passive. Now talking about team members, I really expected to have serious energy concerns, but Ayaka just deals so much damage and so many hits of cryo that I actually felt okay without a cryo battery, so using a team like mine I think is a very valid option. However, my specific team actually does not mesh that well for a few reasons. Mona is both a damage amp and a Hydra aura for the team, and as we would like to limit swapping back and forth between characters, we'd kind of like to be able to cast her burst and then cast her skill for the off-field Hydra application. However, while her skill has a delay, it will deal damage roughly a second after casting, and thus pop the Omen bubble. So we want to either be able to apply Cryo before her burst, or apply Cryo before her elemental skill deals its first tick of damage. As we were using Bennett as a healer/damage amp, that makes applying Cryo before Mona's burst rather difficult, with only Ayaka, as it will take time to remove Bennett's Pyro Aura with a single Cryo character. And Ayaka's skill and burst are too slow to apply Cryo before Mona's skill deals damage, so your only option is her dash, which will really only work against one enemy. Now what I had originally thought was that Sucrose's burst will get infused by an element. I could simply start the fight by dashing into an enemy with Ayaka to apply Cryo, and get that 18% Cryo buff, swap to Sucrose to gather enemies, and then infuse her burst with Cryo, so that when it came time to use Mona's burst, Sucrose would be applying Cryo and thus enable freeze. This can work, but there is one major flaw. Sucrose's burst takes forever before it actually infuses an element. So even if you apply Cryo with Ayaka, cast Sucrose's burst followed by her skill, however many times you can cast it, and then to Bennett for his attack buff, you generally will end up infusing Sucrose's burst with Pyro instead. If you have Kazuha, however, his burst hits immediately, and so should easily infuse with Cryo. So on top of providing a large damage bonus, this issue shouldn't be a problem and allow you to have a fluid rotation. For using a Cryo battery instead of an Anemo character, one that can apply a large amount of Cryo in a short time, like say Rosaria, will make the rotation much easier as well. You can simply start with Bennett, then swap to Rosaria for her skill and burst, which will clear the Pyro, apply the Cryo you need, and you are good from there. Now in this stage I made a bit of a mistake. I didn't realize Ayaka's burst would straight up kill him, and so probably shouldn't have used say Mona in order to give me a bit more time to get their bursts back. Probably also should have given Mona an ER Sans instead of the attack one she is wearing, but I didn't change around anyone's gear for this. I just sort of went in, as all I had originally intended to do was get an idea of Ayaka's damage. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think the new crafted weapon is a great choice for Ayaka for two major reasons. The first is that if you are using an energy recharge weapon, you should be trying to be able to use her burst off cooldown, which is 20 seconds. However, her skill cooldown is 10 seconds, so you can only average 2 skills per burst, and so only get 2/3 effectiveness out of the weapon ability. The second reason is a weakness with the weapon itself. As you start a fight in the Abyss, you cannot cast abilities, and so cannot reasonably gain any seeds before the burst cast, and as the seeds give energy when the burst is used, this weapon won't help you get your second burst at all. It will only be the third and beyond bursts that you will get faster. And so because you need to average at maximum 90 seconds per chamber to get 9 stars, you don't have much time to not have your burst if that's what you are relying on.
Kamisato.
As you will be able to see in this last chamber, not having Ayaka and Mona's burst kind of throw me for a loop, and this chamber takes far longer than it should. However, Ayaka can apply so much Cryo that she manages pretty much by herself to remove the Abyss Herald's shield in about 30 seconds, which is amazing for me, as it usually takes me easily over a minute. Honestly, I'm not sure there's even much point in swapping those few times to Bennett. I probably could have just continued using Ayaka. And with that, we reach the end of the video. How is your Ayaka's gear currently looking? What team members are you using with her? Do you enjoy essentially endlessly dashing around enemies? Or even with the improvements, do you still feel her dash is kinda wonky? Do let me know down below in the comments. Thank you for watching. Look forward to seeing you again next time, and hope you all have a great day.